The Agency Principles Podcast with Doug Baxter and Simon Morgan.
What a buyer really needs to see is that I'm confident that the agency is in a place that we can help them accelerate from and into a mutually beneficial future.
A lot of indie agency owners just aren't aware of the options that are open to them.
Hello and welcome to the second edition of Agency Principles. And in this series, we're looking to talk to agency owners about how you strategically set about building and realizing the value of the agency that you spent your life building, the independent agency. And today, I'm delighted to be joined by Stephen Brown, who is the CEO of Fuse Create, which is a top independent agency in Toronto, Canada. And we've been privileged to work in many different areas with Stephen over the last 8-9 years. So, Stephen, can I just start? Because one of the first experiences we had with you was selling an agency, selling the healthcare agency side of things, which you had, which was Fuse Health. Can I start by asking why you made that decision?
Sure. And hi, Doug. Thanks for having me on. I can't explain Fuse Health unless I explain a bit about Fuse Create. So in the 23-year history of Fuse Create, when we engaged you, we were at sort of a pivot point in the business of Fuse Create. And really a big part of that pivot was to really make sure we were building an agency that was solid on, creative first, people first. And after a rough time in the business evolution, we really needed to get back to our roots. So that's the journey of really truncated version of Fuse Create. We had in our history to that point also had invested in about 3 other companies, and one of them was Fuse Health. And Fuse Health was a very successful, very strategic, very smart agency focused in the pharmaceutical space. And we had taken it as far as we could. So at the time when we invested in it, I think we were being a little unstrategic on how we were doing these things. Opportunity would arise. There was these great, smart women in healthcare. Let's back them. And without taking the time to see, does a general agency, an integrated agency, and a healthcare agency, can they really do much together? No. We can do the back office together. We can support them. We know how to run an agency. But pharmaceutical advertising and marketing is way different than, consumer stuff that we do. Far more complicated, far more science-based. So we were good at maybe part of helping them run, but to get to that next level, we weren't the right partners anymore. So it was really more about looking inward and going, this group of smart healthcare practitioners in the marketing space, they are not going to get to the level they deserve to get to being backed by us. And at the same time, that allowed us to bid our focus about building what we're good at, which is a more integrated creative first agency in the consumer B2C, some B2B space, but not being distracted by health, which is a very complicated area. So it's really more about strategic, trying to align, focus on what you're good at, and just kind of release what you're not so good at.
That's interesting. And can you tell me, if we can dig a little deeper into that, when you managed to park or sell the healthcare side, what were the kind of top priorities for you? You talked about that renewed focus you could have. Where did you really channel that? What were the strategic imperatives or the key things that you managed to do?
On the health side, it was to get them with people who are more aligned to health. For the consumer side, the integrated agency, it was really doubling down on the brand that we were building and the services that we were providing. So in the we didn't sell 7 years ago, but our strategy of the last 7 years when you and I started working together, really for the Fuse Create, the main agency, the one we own now, it really was to anchor where our core focus was. So our core focus was creativity, creative first. We have this mantra called turn heads. So really, how are we making sure that the consumer or the customer of our clients is noticing what we're doing? Just kind of the litmus test. Is it actually going to turn ahead? Does it turn ahead? It also is anchored in results to make sure we're delivering it, but also even how we show up in the market and how we show up with potential hires. Are we turning everyone's heads to us the right way? So we started that. We really doubled down on our creative product, investing in great creative talent, investing in much more effort in strategy, where I think we had been. It's not a think. I know we were weak in both those areas before. And so we anchored the foundation of the business, which is be creative first, laser focused on that, be strategic, go up, higher up the food chain ladder with our clients, and then started adding some more services that completely connected to it. So in our past, where we would add some things, it was because of opportunity, not because of really being anchored in what we're doing. So what we did was we started building out a media department, which has grown a lot in the last 5 years. That media department really allowed strategy, creative, and media to work in unison, and it's our largest growing area. And then also add on more areas, and as far as PR, we're building out our PR right now and building out our influencer works. It's really more about that. It's never easy. It's always tough in this business, but it's going to what are we really good at, and how will we further excel that? And that's also explains why it was good for us to find a new partner or a new future for Fuse Health.
That's great. But beyond that organic growth, because most owners really think in terms of organic and building something that they can go on to sell, that's not really where you're going. Why is it you're choosing a new deliberate strategy? What's driving this new strategy of yours?
It's probably a mix of a few things. So it's not an either or, it's a both strategy. So as I've said, organically, we've been able to double the business in the last 5 years post the pandemic, the fly out of the pandemic. And most of that's been organic. So through new services, better base product as far as our creative and strategic offering. So we've done well on actually turning heads. Where I find at least in our market, is growth to the level I'd like to get to, which is like larger scale. I think you need a bit of both. And so what we've been looking for is where is there a partnership opportunity through some form of an acquisition, and that could be everything from a buyout to a partnership to a share swap. And how can we get that? How can we find potential ways to add on to the business to get us growth as long as it fits in that core essence of what we're trying to build here? So again, still a creative first, turn heads approach to a client building our agency. But it fits into one of the areas, and I can walk you through that if you want some of the areas that we're looking for. Then if someone else has built it before or it has a substantial head start, then I can capture that growth much faster, and that revenue starts right away so that I'm getting faster growth, more strategic growth, and faster.
One of the things that I think is really interesting about Fuse Create is your ambition that you've manifest by expanding into the US market over the last 5 years, winning clients south of the border, taking on stuff like social media duties for some of your clients. What part does that play in the strategy? And did you really realize that was going to be something that was going to be such a powerful propellant of the business?
I think part of the way the world works is some of it just happens and some of it you plan to happen. Which one comes first is a bit different. We have one client, Ricola, amazing CPG client for us. We were doing work in Canada. We were doing great work in Canada. The US said, we love the work you're doing in social media. Can you help us? And we started doing that. So they're a large client for us. So that's an example where, and it's one of a few where we start working on something, another country sees it, and you go from there. And it's grown into other countries. That might have been the germ of the idea when it was happening. But early we said, from a scale perspective, we would be smarter to just think of ourselves as North American versus this border that exists between us. So the last 3 years, we've been consciously saying, okay, how do we show up more as North American and less as Canadian? Proud Canadian here, not degrading the country that supports me, but just looking at the market of North America. Toronto is a very talented, smart city that shows up like most American big cities for as far as our community and advertising goes. So we knew we had the chops to be able to do the work there. Part of it was just us getting over our own potential hangups or internal hangups, just start acting more North American versus Canadian. But the reason behind that was we immediately saw the size and scale. So if you win a mid-sized client in the US, it is like a large client in Canada. And we've gotten to the point in Canada where we've done well. We've grown the business. We've doubled the business recently, last 5 years or whatever. But every client you get is a great 3% ad or 4% ad, which is great, versus how do we get to some of those 15% ads or 20% ad in the form of client spend? It's hard to do in Canada. I'd also say that the Canadian big accounts that come up are still going to companies that are bigger than us. They still want to see that 200-person agency, not a 70-person agency. So that's where we were finding that balance of trying to get growth to the next scale. We're a bit stifled in Canada and more opportunity in the US. So that's the hybrid of the two coming together. And I'll be honest, while there's certain things you have to do a bit differently from the US, they're like any other market. I find they just want to see great strategic, well thought out work and that their needs are cared for. So the model isn't radically different. Be incredibly agile, be incredibly creative, and be attentive to what their needs are. And the business isn't hard to get. And then I would also say once you've opened doors, the next door opens up much faster. The Americans are way more open to an entrepreneurial spirit than some of the structured, more conservative Canadians are. So they'll introduce you to their other partners or open other doors for you and open up.
I know you're very active in Worldwide Partners. And one of the themes or one of the key strategic goals of Worldwide is reminding people of the power of independent agencies. And we see ourselves very much, or certainly from our point of view, operating globally, we do see the strength, the power, the ability of independent agencies who are very focused like yourselves to adapt and to win. What else do you think for other independent agency owners, where would you tell them to focus?
I think the mistakes, and these are mistakes I used to make, and I think you learn from your mistakes, or hopefully you learn from your mistakes, and our team definitely has. I think the fundamentals of being an independent is you need to treat there's a few things. One is you need to treat your business like a client. So, the brand of Fuse Create is a client to us, and we put resources and budget behind them. The concept of, yes, we have a great network and we are always managing the network, but the amount of investment and making sure that people know who you are and what you stand for is critical. Baked in that is an implied idea is really have your story of what you stand for, what you are. So our mantra is turn heads. That is everything that we lead with. It took us a while to figure out how important that was, but once we landed on it, and that is Steve Miller, our head of creative, our ECD, who landed that right when he got here 7 years ago, that really helped us make sure that we're going forward with a story and a position and a point of view. So building that brand that connects. So I would say those are the two. And then the third one is take it off my shoulders and my business partner Garo's shoulders, build an incredible leadership team. So I think there's sometimes the goals and ambitions of an individual owner or partnership is often capped by their capacity. And so what I realized after doing this for many years is it's never about stepping back or stepping out. It's about stepping to the side to make sure more people, the team below you, who you want as your leaders, have the autonomy, the freedom, the excitement, the passion to grow. My job is to make sure that we're all going in the right direction. My job is not to be the front anymore. And that's where I think a lot of owners get in the way, when they really should let others shine. So the brand that we are today is not the Stephen Brown or Garo Karastecki brand. It is a collective brand of many people. If you search us on recent headlines, I show up sometimes, but by plan, head of creative, our head of strategy, our head of client services, all that group, that media, they are in the news more than I am. That's intentional.
I've always been impressed by that. Is there a line that's drawn? I mean, I always hear you talk about, Steve and Alina and Luke and other leaders of your business. When you're building that secondary leadership team, which is something that we talk about a lot, that, it's really necessary for owners who at some point are going to move on to have a properly motivated and empowered secondary leadership. Is there a line at which you say, okay, you can do all of this stuff, but myself and the other founder will take on these really? Or is it all bets are off and they can do pretty much anything?
Well, it's definitely not all bets are off. You can do anything as long as but we as a group build the strategy of the business. So we have a brand plan that we built together. We have a strategic plan that we build every year together, and we have a 3-year plan. So maybe that's the other part of what are some of the mistakes that agencies don't do is they don't plan enough. So we do the planning. As long as what you're doing fits in the plan, you have a lot of freedom. So that's where, and like, I don't run the PR anymore. We now have a head of PR, Jen, and Steve's heavily involved in that. That's their job to build the brand of this agency. Of course, I'm in it and I'm involved in it, but it's stronger because I'm not my strength is client services, how I grew up in here. They have better ideas about how to brand this business. As long as I'm involved in it, I want them to have the autonomy. The other sort of demarcation line is around governance of the business. That's clear. Like, there's certain things, there's only so much we can invest. that comes down to the owners. When it comes down to strategic investments that they're going to make, that comes down to me. But I'm not doing that I can't do that in isolation or in my own little room. That has to be part of the group. It's more about alignment than consensus.
In the past, I know we've come close to selling a couple of times, but you decided it wasn't for you. I know in every deal there's mechanics and process and reasons to say, no, it's not right. Beyond that, there's always a time and a feeling. Did you have a feeling or an instinct that it just wasn't right? It wasn't what you wanted to pursue?
And I'll be honest, it's very complicated knowing when is the right time, if there's a right time, all that stuff. It's also further complicated by competing interests of partnerships. So what do I want to do versus what my partner wants to do, or where we are in our life stages? It's not a simple answer. For one of the reasons we didn't sell was a functional one. There was some behind the scenes things that just were getting in the way. But we got close, as you know, and I think my takeaway from that was when we decided not now, hold for a bit. My sense of relief was bigger than I was expecting. And so, you can plan everything. You can do your pro con column on a page and write it all down. But a lot of it is gut. And I always say this, like, no doesn't mean no forever. I cannot run this forever. I'm not planning on running it well into my later stages of life. But the timing has to fit on a few things. So one is, what feels right for the business, what feels right for me, and then a bit of what is the right time. And part of the challenge about selling, you don't need to, but it's best to sell when you're on a high. And we have been on a high recently, and we were on a high when you and I were talking about that. I actually feel like the height we're at right now, or the height when we said no, is still a fair bit away from the height we're going to get to. And growing, that build has been so rewarding that the concept of me to hand it over at this point when I'm still loving the business this much was really hard to do. What I'm not also conscious of, though, is because the whole bird in the hand analogy, two in the bush.
I think I used that once or twice.
I know. There's risk. There's risk in doing this. Now, listen, you have to be comfortable with risk to run an agency, run any business. But that's the point. Is now the time or not the time? It came down to then it wasn't the best time for what the business would benefit from, and what I was going to benefit from. My lesson going forward was whether I sell externally, whether we sell externally, or whether we do an MBO, or whether whatever the option is. I didn't realize how much important it is to see where the business lands is very important to me. I specifically 23 years in this. I don't have some weird belief that it's going to be just like it was before. I get it's going to change, but I want to know it's going into hands of people who are going to at least value what we've built and try to hold on to portions of that. And specifically the team, it's the people more than anything. So that's just some learning that I've had going through it.
Good learnings, but now you're following a different path. You're looking at ways of expanding your business. You're looking at some acquisitions, maybe partnerships to build the business further. That's a very interesting strategy for other owners, because I think the problem in the market at the moment is the difficulty of growth. It's very hard to grow nowadays organically through new business in the way that we used to when we grew up in the business. So as you look out there, and we've talked to other agencies and other brands, what is it you look for now when you're looking to potentially acquire or invest in another marketing services business?
Yeah, there's a lot. If I was to boil it down, the two core things, and again, this is probably learned more from some of the mistakes I've done over the years. One is alignment of values. You're going to be partnering or buying a group of people who you're going to have to work with for quite a while in an earn out. Can I work with them? Do we kind of respect and understand each other to a degree? Because it's going to be massive change, or significant change, if not massive. And so I got to be able to be in a room with someone who I can work with and my team can work with. So that's one. That's hard. The second one is the same word, alignment, but alignment of fit. So if I look at the mistakes of our early years, we would bolt on for the sake of bolting on, and it was in the marketing space, but is it really aligned to what we're trying to do? So right now, the ones that I've been looking at are really targeted and specific on how do they improve the brand of Fuse Create. And so examples are geography. So one that I'm planning right now is there's a geographic fit US presence. So I have a bigger team in the US. That's an automatic easy one for me to sort of explain to people and for the team to understand. The other one is around the services. So much of what we do fits in this social media massive juggernaut. And so we do tons of that already, but is there an area that maybe we're relying more on other partners for, that if we built or bought or acquired, we could be keeping more of that revenue within the larger team? So that helps self-fund it. So an example is, one that I'm working on right now. Part of the funding is coming from me diverting what we would pay to vendors to what they would be doing, so that you're using your current budgets to help fund what you're trying to do. And that's in the digital space. So those are the two zones. Like, one is I can work with the people, I like the people, or at least respect them. And two is it has to fit the Fuse Create offering.
When we're talking about questions that are of burning concern to other agency owners, I think there's probably one which we need to template and ask in everything, is around the question of how different agencies are responding to AI. And I think you're particularly interesting in that so much of your focus is creativity and turning heads, which you've been very successful in terms of the kind of work you're doing, creative leadership, social leadership in the North American market. How do you position creativity so that it doesn't suffer in the wake of the effect of AI?
AI's just made it a lot easier for us to ideate and conceptualize, and then get the conceptualization of our ideas into a presentable format to our clients a lot easier. So the benefit for us has been, it helps us build a better product without it, but it doesn't, like, it still needs us. Like, it's not a case where it's just doop, 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 and here's the concept and here's the campaign. It's actually just more of a great tool that allows us to be more creative. So I don't overthink it. First and foremost, it's still so early in its evolution as far as what it's going to eventually do. And I don't sit up at night going, is it going to replace us? I think there's so much human intuition and stuff that's required. But if it can make my team work better without having to work as late or work smarter and not harder type thing, then it's a win-win. And then I look at it a lot from just the operations of the business, from, note-taking through to helping us consolidate the RFP processes and all that stuff. And it's just trying to, how can it help remove some headaches? That's kind of our focus on it. We've been using it a lot. It's been quite successful for us. We've also let it helping us develop concepts. It's a tool. It's a good tool.
That's good. So if we look, just closing off now, there's a lot going on in your agency. You've changed a lot. You've positioned it. You've driven the agency forward. You've doubled the size of the agency. You're expanding down to the US market. You're expanding into PR. You've really doubled or tripled the media revenue going through the business over the last 5 or 6 years. That's a colossal amount of progress in a relatively short amount of time. Let's try and move that forward 5 years. What does success look like? What's the ultimate goal of how does that story end?
Well, first and foremost, the benefit of being an independent is you can set that dot on the horizon and aim for it. And whether you achieve it or not, I mean, there's no one telling you what the dot on the horizon is. So my dot is heavily influenced, that horizon spot is heavily influenced on what will make me and my team happy. What makes us feel like it's worth getting out every day, getting out of bed and coming to work and working our butts off. One is scale. If you're growing the business, you feel like you're achieving something. I don't have a specific amount that it has to get to this point. But, getting over 25 million in gross margin and fees is a point where I feel like I've achieved something. We're getting there, inching every year. We're getting closer and closer to it. But that's one. But it doesn't have to be that amount. I don't know. It could be more. It could be a little less. It doesn't. But the focus on growth means there's the right momentum. And with momentum, it makes everything a lot easier. That'd be one. Two is the brand that we built, the brand of Fuse Create and what it stands for and reputational excellence, the creative product that we produce, how that helps build people's careers, makes them feel successful is great. And even just how much we give back to the community or engage in the community. Our reputation is something that's intangible that I personally feel is incredibly important. I guess third is why I think I've been doing this all along is to be proud. The feeling that I've built something and the work that we put out there. And I don't know, as you get old and you go, remember that billboard or that campaign or whatever, there's a sense of accomplishment that you're proud of. So it's funny, I have already done well. I'm pretty comfortable. So I've never been motivated by what's the size of the check I leave the business with. I'm not saying I'm going to give away for free or anything like this, but it's really more about those elements of, I feel like I've built something I'm proud of, a brand I'm proud of, a team I'm proud of. Yeah, I want to be proud of what I've done. And I feel proud of it.
Well, yeah, it's a great thing to have achieved. And at what part does the independence play in that? I mean, is that a deep burning conviction that, you always wanted to be independent, or is it something that suits you for now, but could change if the right opportunity came along?
I don't want to fall into the independence or nothing type mind trap, because at some point there's only so much I can do or my team can do. I just think there are essence of independence that I'd never want to give up. And the essence of independence is the autonomy to do great work, the agility, the drive, the entrepreneurial drive. So if that means that we stay independent forever, and this gets evolved into future owners take it over, great. But there might be a partner out there at some point who also celebrates those things and wants to grow something together that fits this. So yeah, it's more the spirit of independence versus the literal description of independence. I would say what's happening with some of the mega companies in this industry of consolidation through profit, through consolidation and efficiency plays doesn't really fit that. But there are all sorts of other networks out there who are trying to grow to a certain scale that might be the perfect fit as long as they fit that sort of spirit that I'm looking for.
Stephen, you've been very humble in this talk, and you talked a lot about the mistakes that you've made and learning from the mistakes along the way. So if you were starting out again, are there things that you would do differently along that path?
Yeah, the ones that I'm comfortable saying publicly. There's a few. And part of it is my heritage. Like, we started more as a digital CRM sort of retail agency below the line back in the days. I won't get into that, but when there was a line and there's no line anymore. And so that was part of maybe the roots that influenced me. I think the industry started to make agencies too complicated X number of years ago. And by complicated, they were looking for widgets or silver bullets that would fix different problems. And I think the success of the last few years, the last 7 years, has really been about getting back to the core fundamentals. Why do brands need agencies? The main reasons is we are creative and strategic partner for them to solve their marketing problems. And so I think when we were starting this business, we were looking at, okay, add this on. Really, it's all about the simplicity of bringing it together. So if I could have earlier in my career doubled down on creative strategy and it's the hardcore team of the story of Fuse Create and what we're meant to do for our clients, not all clients, but the ones that we fit with, it would have probably saved me significant amount of investment money that was wasted and a lot of headaches. And final thing is, it takes a long time, but find the right people and do whatever it takes to hold on to them. I used to be romanced by smart but not aligned people, or people who could solve all your problems. Just like the partnership conversation about who's the right partner for you out there in an acquisition, the same thing goes with the senior team and the whole team is like-minded, smart, well-respected people.
Well, looking back as my time as an agency owner of over 20 years of doing it, I wish that I'd done some of those things too. So I'm sure there's a lot of lessons and thoughts there for other agency owners. Thank you very much for today. That was really fantastic.
Thank you, Doug.
We will talk again soon, Stephen.
Perfect. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
The Agency Principles podcast was brought to you by Doug Baxter and Simon Morgan from Agency Futures. If you like what you've heard today, please follow or subscribe to get the latest updates.